Thanks very much for joining, everyone. It's really nice to see you all here. I hope the entry into the second month of the year finds you all well. For those of you that don't know me, my name is James Casey. I lead the Financial Professional Services team in Germany, and I've recently also been taking on the role of the European DI Committee lead. I'm thrilled to be able to take a more active role in promoting this agenda. It's something that has been important to me for much of my career, and I wish to do all that I can to be an advocate of this movement in any way that may be. Therefore, I'm understandably very excited to be a part of today's conversation, discussing the topic of empowering female leaders and what we as individuals can do to be involved in furthering this cause. As you can see, we've got an amazing panel of speakers who are going to share with you some of their experiences and provide guidance and insight into how each of us can be an ally in ensuring we strive towards the goal of true gender parity. Just a few brief notes regarding the format today. We actively encourage all of you to ask any questions you wish using the chat box. We've enabled the function that all of the speakers are able to see the questions, and we will be taking some of these through to the panel to be asked on your behalf at several points during the hour. Those questions that we cannot immediately answer today, we will endeavour to answer these after the event and follow up with you directly on these responses. Now, without further ado, let me hand you over to the panel. Can I ask each of you please to briefly introduce yourself, starting with you, Christina?
Yeah, thanks, James, and looking forward very much to the conversation. So my name is Christina Gottschau, and I'm also in rainy Düsseldorf, like James. And yeah, so my history on the topic of D&I actually goes back to the year 2005, where honestly, when we started, we all didn't really quite know what all that was about, which on the other hand really gave us a lot of space to learn and grow. And my longest corporate career has been with a US multi-industry company called Johnson Controls. My very personal journey led me from the very early beginning in the hotel industry, studying economics and North America studies in Berlin, to various jobs in the field of human resources and leadership development. And in my last corporate role, I was the D&I manager for the EMEA region with a target workforce of 48,000 people distributed in 40 different countries, with the main industry being automotive, battery, and building efficiency. And in 2017, I started my own business called Raven Business Transformations, where I offer consulting and training on diversity and inclusion and coaching. And I have in particular specialized in the coaching field through education in North America. And specifically, I'm a certified coach of the Tiara leadership model, where we target women in particular. And I would like to give over to whoever is next.
Thank you very much. So Stefanie, if you'd like to go next.
Yes, thanks. Thanks, James. So my name is Stefanie. I'm born and raised in Bavaria, now in my late 30s, and I'm living in Wiesbaden. It's also quite rainy here. I'm working in Frankfurt, even though traveling a lot under normal circumstances, not nowadays. My background is pretty much focused on psychology and business administration, economics, and I'm currently working with Uponor as VP HR for the business segment, Building Solutions Europe. And I'm leading a diverse HR team across Europe and Russia. I mean, in case you have not heard about Uponor yet, we are listed on Nasdaq Helsinki, and our vision is rethinking water for future generations, which means in short, we produce and sell our products for drinking water delivery, radiant heating and cooling. The first thing which came to my mind when I'm asked to introduce myself is I'm a passionate HR leader. I love what I'm doing every day. So I'm very blessed since approximately 20 years now. I was in several HR leadership roles within different industries. I started at Deutsche and worked there for 7 years and another 5 years for General Electric, for instance. But one thing these companies all had in common, it is diversity and inclusion was high on their agenda. And it was key for the senior leadership to benefit having diverse teams in place. The first time I got in touch personally with D&I was actually at my first job at Deutsche Bank when I wrote my thesis about demographic change and the impact on leadership of future generations. And that was also the first time when I got in touch with Charta der Vielfalt. So I'm very pleased to be part of that discussion today. And I'd like to contribute with my own experience being a female leader since I'm 26 years old, and my experience as an international HR leader in the context of D&I within the companies and industries I worked with. And I'm super excited to meet these powerful panelists today who are so experienced and focused on D&I. And last but not least, what does D&I mean to me personally? Especially growing the next generation of female leaders means a lot to me, as I had and I still do have great mentors in my network who are 100% committed to help me grow my career and having an impact. So my personal motto is, if you have some power, then your job is to empower the next generation of leaders. Back to you,
Thanks very
James.
much. Thanks, Stefanie. Anna, if you'd like to take the stage.
Yeah, great to be here, James. Thanks for the invitation and thanks for putting this panel together. I mean, this is always a pleasure to push the change agenda for gender equality. Just from my introduction, I've been around 30 years in business now. Oh God, that sounds very old. The first 15 years I've been setting up my personal career in risk and finance management in heavy industry, engineering and constructing, like Preussag, a company that doesn't exist anymore, and transformed to TUI now, ABB, you know. And then I went into banking and financial services. And right before the financial crisis, I joined EY as a partner in restructuring. As you can see, that was all a very male-dominated world. And especially as finance and risk manager, I've almost always been the only woman in cross-border transaction, you know, negotiating in Bahrain instead of Saudi Arabia or anywhere around the Eastern world. So I made my experiences and working my own career, my visibility, and fighting to be always a little bit faster than others and very diligent. So whenever we talk about female career perspectives, I think we all think when we start and enter the workforce, we can rock it all, and then we feel a little bit more and more the glass ceiling coming up. So I joined as a partner at EY and went into restructuring of financial services, of course, like after the financial service crisis. And then they asked me to join the leadership team at EY, and we were driving the transformation from an expert organization to a team organization. So I was heading as a managing partner, the talent organization, and, you know, starting with this purpose-driven transformation, flexibility agenda. And there was my way of, you know, working in a network and changing the world a little bit more from a very, exclusive, not very open society to an inclusive leadership agenda. Make it a more, like Stefanie said, an employer value to be, you know, inclusive and a diverse group and being part of a winning team. After that journey, 10 years at EY, Allianz asked me to join them as a CHRO in the board. And driving the digital agenda for Allianz, that was a pleasure. So building up on the experience of EY, and then set up the digital agenda until last year. And now I took a year off. I'm an investor and in startup companies and advisor. At the same time, I'm chairing the Charta of Diversity, as Stefanie just mentioned, Charta of Vielfalt, that is driving the change. And we have about 3,500 people signing the Charta of Diversity, or companies and businesses. And that amounts to 25% of all employees in Germany driving the diversity agenda. So there's a lot to discuss what we can do and how we can push the agenda further. Thank you, James.
Wonderful, thanks so much, Anna. And last but not least, Katharina.
Thank you, James. So my name is Katharina Wegera. I am Executive Director at the SR Group and leading our Fraser-Jones operations in Germany, which James is part of as well. And as a company, we have been driving the diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda quite a lot over the last years, which is also a personal interest of mine. I've been fortunate enough to have assembled a really talented and very diverse team, especially regarding cultural diversity, which is regarding my background, I've lived and worked in several countries, has always something that has accompanied me throughout my entire life, basically. My background is actually not in recruitment, but I have been working in organizational consulting for quite a while, and had always had touch points with diversity topics, as well as we, for example, also hosted competitions and audited companies on their diversity agenda as well. Also regarding if they, for example, have signed the Charta of Diversity. And I thought it was very interesting because I saw that some companies were diverse as, you know, out of a necessity because of the business that they have, but some companies also, you know, embrace the fact that just people are different. So I found that always very, very intriguing to see what reasons and why companies are diverse and what they feel is their benefit from being diverse. I've also done a lot of leadership development throughout my career, and I've realized that not only is there a difference, I think, in a lot, and I don't want to generalize here, but there's a difference in a lot of male leaders versus female leaders, which also I find very intriguing, you know, to explore. But also because more and more it became a feeling of, okay, there's also a kind of imbalance. So that's something that we, you know, at the SR Group try to, you know, focus on and support that there's a change change that needs to be made. So I'm very happy to be part of this panel today and to get to know all of you and explore the topic of female leadership a bit deeper. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kata. And thank you all for joining. It's yeah, as I mentioned at the start, a fantastic panel, and I'm sure we've got some really good things to discuss. So I just wanted to make a very, very quick callback to the last event, and in particular one conversation that we had. So Tina Kleingarn, who's part of Working Mums, which is a large gem for AIN, promoting female empowerment, and one of her requests during our last event, which was a bit more general on the topic of D&I, was that everyone supports the second act of participation for equality at the leadership level on the gender topic. And there was, of course, very recently some great success on that front with the passing of the law in enabling more than 4 member boards to have at least one female member across all of the DAX 30 and of course many other industries as well. I guess that's a good start, but there absolutely is so much more room for improvement, and I think it's on everyone's shoulders. It's not just companies and individuals alone, but all of us together to push this through. So I think what would be really beneficial here is to really understand what some of the initiatives that we can get involved in are, or what advice, information any of our speakers might be able to share with all of you today. So if I can ask you to start, Anna, and maybe you can provide a little bit more clarity for everyone.
Yeah, James, this is a huge topic, I guess. Especially what I think is very important, that is like the whole female agenda now driving for years, especially the last 15 years in Germany, and I know Germany is slow and a little bit behind, was pushing the agenda for different living models. And I always say that it was a very, very important flexibility agenda that was needed, for example, to face the crisis we are in right now. So since I've been working with so many companies over the last 15 years, setting the flexibility agenda in matters of how I work, what times I work, time schedules, and where I work up, made it possible that those companies already, were able to switch into home office and had a culture of virtual leadership. And that's why I think it's so important to emphasize that female leadership and, bringing in different perspective to the table and just asking the people to rethink the living models of their employees and setting up structures and instruments to enable the people that work for you in different kind of ways. That was, the beginning where I thought slowly something is moving. And of course, we were setting up everything what we could do, a lot of instruments, and we started with the female agenda by just saying, females have to speak up. So women are hiding away. We have to have rhetoric classes, and you have to learn how to be in the boardroom with a loud voice and things like that. And I always got so troubled about this agenda because I felt, let's not, fix the female problem, but fix the problem in the workforce. There are so many different characters in the workforce. They could be male, could be female, could be diverse, that don't speak up and don't have the visibility. So we're working, whenever we start discussing, female issues, we are working for a whole group of workforce that want a different way of talking and being inclusive together. That's why we started an agenda like say, you need reportings, you need tone from the top, you need role models in all layers of careers. You need to emphasize leadership skill sets and being inclusive, being aware of your own prejudice, It's like your stereotypes. I mean, the work is like, I learned how to work, and the leader has to be like, I was a leader when I was successful. All those things, to break those open. And then slowly you start seeing things of inclusiveness evolving. But it's a hard work journey. And I did it within the company, and then I found it with the Charter of Diversity, larger group to transform the society. Because what I think is like, business is only a mirror of society. Even though you're somewhere in like EY, you're a lead of academics, of course, and in other companies you have a different workforce, but you still always have to be in relation with society, your clients, your employee, and of course the planet, because climate change asks for a huge inclusive leadership effort we have to bring. Because after this awareness that it is important to have all the perspectives in the workforce and all those instruments setting up, and you working into an inclusive culture, what you reach is a learning culture. And you reach, with all those different perspectives and diversity, the ability to reduce complexity. Even that sounds paradox, but if you have a complex program and you do just solve it by using these successful instruments of the past, you might as well not do anything at all, because it's not future orientated with all the complex problems with climate change, inequality in the world, digitization, globalization. So all the mega trends, you really have to break them down and be open for all perspectives. And that's where we are right now at the Charter of Diversity. We are always taking the holistic approach, because it's the individual and the potential of the individual that makes you being successful in the future. So what we're doing right now is like putting all the companies together, speak up and say, in a crisis where you have to rethink and transform a lot faster than in the past, you have to look for collaboration and for inclusiveness and an open learning culture. And as we can see right now, the vaccine distribution, there are businesses, there are science organizations, there are politicians, they have to collaborate and work together, and they don't have an understanding from what's the perspective of the other one. So the only help you can have is, set the seed of inclusive leadership, being open. You never know everything what someone else knows. And coming from the know, all our leaders were like, I know everything, and I get the information first, and here's my hierarchy, and then I give you whatever I like to give you, and I give the same to someone else in competition. Everything of this is not working in the future. It slows you down. It doesn't have the perspective. It doesn't make you creative, not innovative. And that's where we're fighting for diversity. And gender is just a visible, sign that we are not there where we have to be, because we don't have everyone at the table in this decision-making process. And I'm one of 100 top women in Germany. So in business, 100. I mean, they're working thousands of leaders. So that's a very, very small groups, and everything what I can do and my network can do to change that and to ask for a change, we are doing with the Charter of Diversity and other initiatives. So I slow down now because I get very emotional and very passionate about the problem and how we solve it. And I'm, of course, very impatient as well, because I've been discussing these kind of topics in 2010 with Home Office, and now we have 21, and there's still people thinking that people only work if I can see them working. So there has to be a major shift in business to be successful in the future.
Thanks so much, Anna. I think that was a really powerful statement, in particular that don't fix the woman, fix the problem. I think that's something that resonates so strongly, and even in the chat box, people have really come back saying that that's a really strong statement. So thank you. Katharina, if you'd like to go next.
I would like to touch on a point that I already mentioned, and I think it's that the current situation why female leaders are successful is kind of adapting to an already established sort of what's expected and what performance should look like, and what somebody who's assertive would look like, and who's perceived as a strong leader would look like, rather than being measured according maybe to different measures that might be more appropriate or that might have a different angle. So I think that's a very, very important topic to have in mind and to discuss always. In terms of what can be done, obviously there's a lot. I mean, Anna told us a bit about what can be done on a larger scale, obviously with the help of, for example, organizations like a Charta of Diversity. I think it's also important to have the direct environment in the view as well, because for example, we as a company do lots of surveys around the question of diversity to ask, do you feel that you're treated equally, that you're treated fairly? Do you perceive that everybody in the business is treated fairly? Do we have an inclusive environment? And what can we do, to even become more inclusive? Although I believe we've done quite a good job already. However, I think that's important to always monitor that something doesn't go wrong. And we just don't see it because, we go back into thinking along, more established lines of like how somebody should be, how somebody should perform, how somebody should be measured. And at the same time, obviously, we as a company also leverage our position to enforce this topic and to make a bit of noise around it, because we are originally we still have our headquarters in London, and in the UK companies are just way more advanced, I think, on this particular topic than they are in Germany. And I think I've also seen a question in the chat asking why that is, that we in Germany are so far behind other countries. And that would be for me something that I would like to hear actually from my fellow panelists, what they think, why that is.
Please, everyone, feel free to jump in. I don't want to try.
Yeah, maybe I can step in. There is so many things that have been said already by Anna and Katharina, so many topics that you could actually tag onto. And I think one element that I heard both of you also say, and that is really crucial to my heart, is the power systems that we have in place, and which we know not only here in Germany, but in the most parts in the world, they are very masculine driven. So the traits that Christina, you have mentioned with the collaboration, the inclusion, these are very typically named female traits. And when I talk about female and male and masculine and feminine traits, I don't necessarily speak about women and men, because that also is something we really have to understand, that for men, things are changing as well. So it's really talking about the traits and the feminine traits on collaboration. So male or masculine, more masculine traits that are more performance driven is what is successful and what is promoted in organizations. So if we don't want to fix the women, I know that saying as don't fix the women, fix the system, but fixing the system takes quite a while and an effort and a lot of energy. And that is where we all come in to really, how willing are we? And I think if we look particularly at Germany, we know that very traditional German companies have a very hierarchical top-down order structure, which is a very male-driven success measure. So that could be one explanation. And what we are aiming at is really a change of that mindset. And we often heard the unconscious bias and all those things that play a role. Changing systems that have been in place for centuries won't change overnight, but we cannot stop investing the work and investing in our energy to start changing things. And that also requires for businesses to be more willing to allow the feminine traits to come in. And that is also what we see when things are changing. We have to speed up a little bit, and especially the Corona crisis right now also shows us how all of a sudden things that took a long time are actually a little bit more speedy in the decision making. But the decision making, which is done by leaders, requires our conscious presence on what is going on and not just an automatic reply. So it really asks a lot of all of us to step into our consciousness and make those smart choices, and not just keep things going. And having a healthy balance of the masculine and a feminine is really what we are striving for, and where we also know this will be continuing to be quite a hard work for all of us involved, everyone.
Thank you. And I think that sentiment is quite important. It needs continual work there. It can't be a case that things just are eventually achieved. It's a continual process, and it needs constant discussion and constant push from everyone. And I think that some of the suggestions already are being so warmly received in the chat. One question that I did just see was around if you could recommend just a few tools that can enable people to better recognize these masculine and feminine behaviors, and how they can be more cognitious of how they are comporting themselves to be more able to control or even recognize these things.
Yeah, so one book recommendation that I actually can give to you, because it's no secret, and none of all the things we talk about. There has been so many studies on the topic that actually getting to the facts is really no big deal with some research. What I'm referring to in particular is I have been running through a development program myself that was called Shakti Leadership. And that is about embracing masculine and feminine power in business. So I also saw the question, so what is a typical female trait? And kind of like, well, also the reflections in there, but if you look at other studies, it's very similar. Typical traits would, for example, be love, inclusivity. So when we talk about diversity and inclusion, inclusivity in itself is more called a female trait. It's trust. Trust, we all know, is the base for really healthy organizations to thrive. Collaboration, empathy, care, creativity, vulnerability, kindness, openness. And then on the other hand, we look at the masculine traits. There would be focus on task and performance, for example, clarity, assertiveness, focus, direction, order, discipline, structure. So these are just examples, and those are healthy traits. But then also we have to take into account that there are unhealthy traits, which we also need to be aware of. And what we actually want to thrive for is that flexibility for all of us to be able to draw traits that are needed in a very specific moment. So at sometimes I may need to be directive. At sometimes I really have to have a lot of empathy. And these are the things that we have to get our awareness on, to also learn that flexibility in the moments which we gain through presence, to understand and see what's going on.
Probably I may add something. We have been working in a shareholder value environment over the last 30 years, and a lot of companies, like family-owned companies, were more holistic driven. And when you just said flexibility and performance, Christina, it's like we were driving the agenda out of 3 KPIs: growth, profitability, and cost equations. And those were the quantitative values of your setting of your salary and bonus scheme and everything else. That was driving a very masculine, performance-driven, short-term action within the leadership groups. And I've seen so many very innovative and very long-term health growth orientated people during my career that were inclusive and wonderful. But the minute they said, I only have to drive this task until the 31st of December, and then, you know, everything starts new, and as long as I'm successful on that task, everything is fine. The people said, I don't want to drive that agenda. I want to drive a long-term health growth agenda, you know, taking society, planet, and the people as clients and employees into consideration. And as long as we have this very performance, short-term driven agenda, a lot of people back out and they don't speak up. And if you ask for change, those crises we're in right now, or financial crisis, or the refugee crisis, those are moments where you really are able to change that point of view and change the agenda. And we were just, some of us, following Davos or presenting in Davos, and we are talking about stakeholder capitalism right now. So it's the moment where you bring all the perspectives on the table, and then you have all the competencies you were just talking about in a healthy mix. And then you have, you know, a healthy, long-term, value-driven agenda. And I think this is especially very important if you talk about role models and people that are able to crack that open. And this is where the quota comes in. This is where the quota of supervisory boards came in. Those are the moments that help cracking open the mind and the shift of the agenda. And this is what we need right now for society, all the politicians and business, because otherwise, you know, we can't save the planet, we can't save the people. So let's work on that.
So yeah, thank you very much. It's quite a crazy sentiment. You can save the planet, but not the people. But it's, yeah, it's becoming more obvious by the day that seems to be the path that we're going down sometimes. Stefanie, is there anything you can add to this? I'm sure you've got plenty of insights to share.
Yes, I mean, I'm just, you know, I could talk about that for hours, and also listen to these panelists here for hours. It's super interesting, but you know, we talk so much about women to speak up, women in leadership and empowering female leadership. To me, the first pattern is, do women want to lead? Yeah, I mean, do we have really enough encouragement in this female leadership community, that we are really striving for that? Are we aiming to be in leadership positions as women? Do we want to have this, I mean, contribute to these decisions? I think that this is really one pattern we need to overcome. And this is why, when it comes to empowerment of female leaders, from my perspective. And, you know, in general, I encourage everyone, women and men, to be strategic about their careers. And we plan for so many things in life, but people often overlook developing a strategic plan for their career. And from my perspective, women need to be willing to take jobs, apply for jobs they do not 100% fit, but maybe 80%. And from my perspective, again, it is important to be curious and willing to learn. And I would even challenge the fact to fit 100% into a role, because do you then have room to grow further if you bring the 100% already? Yesterday, I really watched a very interesting TED Talk video one of my former colleagues from GE shared on LinkedIn, knowing she has 2 teenage girls at home, and it was about the difference, how we raise boys and girls. And the speaker really said one thing which got stuck in my mind, and it was, we raise boys to be brave and girls to be perfect. And, you know, somehow the key message of that video was to all women out there: build your self-confidence. Yeah, be confident sitting in leadership teams and have an opinion and speaking up. I think women just don't have as much inherent confidence in themselves, and they tend to be harsher critics of themselves than they need to be. This is my comment to that.
And if I may add to that, and then purely now from a recruitment point of perspective, that's something that we see every day. So a lot of men really apply to positions where there's not 100%, not even a 70% fit, whereas women are very conscious about, like, is, you know, what is it really entailing, and can I be a real fit? And that's something that we see on a daily basis, really. So I think you have a very valid point there. And also, but that's also something that I and we as an entire team encourage our clients to have a look into, because it's exactly as you say, if people are limited in the way they can develop, you know, why would they be motivated to, you know, perform well, do their job, go into another, you know, maybe a leadership role or something like that. I think that's something as well that's very specific to Germany, that we are not as open to, you know, embracing or trying out or taking a risk with somebody who has not already proven they can do what we want to hire them for. Yeah, I think that's the limit of, you know, the limitation of putting or encouraging women to go into leadership roles or having women in leadership roles is the mere fact that they might think they're not good enough just because they have not earned that credit yet, you know. And that's something that I find is particularly difficult, or even more difficult, to put all those structural things in place to encourage, you know, diversity and inclusion, is to really give people a voice, or make it very clear to them that their voice is equally important as, you know, everybody else's. And that's something that I think is a really, really, you know, important message to everybody to go for what you want to do. Although you might not be 100% perfect. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I read a really interesting study on exactly that subject, around asking men and women the same question about what they would do in a certain scenario, and it was always a much more brusque and overconfident response from the men, and a much more moderated one from the women in the study. And it's something that I guess is very much at the top of the discussion on this topic. We've had so many good questions coming in. Tobias, have you got any good questions that you can bring in from the audience that the panel could help shed some light on?
Maybe something completely different, but this question was raised several times. So as a result of the Corona crisis, have you observed some kind of setback of the D&I agenda and the progress that you have made over the last years?
Yeah, I think we have to be realistic, and we're not just talking about women in leadership and business, but all women in the society. And there has been a huge setback because most of the work that has been done or is being done in education and health systems are made by women. So this double pressure that has been there before, because you are looked as you're a caretaker at home and for society, is a huge bargain. And homeschooling and home office, it's a huge troubling bargain as well, because I can see a lot of people saying, now we have the cost cutting at itself. We're just not having any offices anymore. You're all working from home because Korea, it's flexibility. You can work from home and you can do this little household and homeschooling, just right there, and you work here. And this is a huge pressure for especially women that, struggle with flexibility or work-life integration over the years. So we can only underline for all the leaders out there saying, watch that agenda being inclusive, because there are people that have an infrastructure and a home where they can cope with the situation. And there are others that don't have that and have the double trouble because they have different living models than you have. So there has been a very difficult time, or there is a very difficult time right now. We have to be aware and have to do a lot more right now than we have been doing before.
And maybe I can just also add a little bit. There was also, in relation to the World Economic Forum just now in Davos, a couple of studies and conversations going on, and they are just devastating, really, to see also how COVID really impacts women from a career perspective, financial perspective, way more. If you look at the number of jobs that have been cut worldwide, I think there was also a number like 1/4 of women who are actually right now wanting to leave the workforce. So that also, I think, goes back to a couple of things that you said, Stefanie, and I think we really need to talk about leadership and power. And what does leadership mean? Because very often, and that's a little bit the work I do with this incredible team, with the Tiara women, who are looking also at leadership not only as a role that you earn, but actually as something all of us do every day in the choices we make. And that is for all of us also to really do that inner work, to know who we are and stand to who we are. And that is where I think also all the confusion comes in, because if you put the women who, and I think I saw that in the questions here someplace as well, where there was the ask, is that DNA based, or is it socialized? And obviously all those traits are socialized, and women obviously have been socialized more with the feminine traits, and then you have that clash with that masculine world. So it really requires that work, and that's, for example, work that I do, is to help really bring out what is it that I stand for. And surprisingly, many women that I work with in particular find that very difficult to really come to that point. I mean, we have been so trained to know where we are and how to adapt in that masculine world, that we forgot to know who are we and what do we stand for, and can we give that words. So, and with that comes the confidence, and with that comes also another understanding of leadership, because we know from tons of studies in the past also what are our perceptions on leadership, and why do women draw back and draw out. And COVID in this very moment, unfortunately, like it does with so many other aspects in the D&I field, really puts the spotlight on all those things that are not working well, and kind of gives us the opportunity again also to see, okay, then if we are serious, if we really want to commit, what is it that we really as organizations are willing to do? How can we tap into the systems to really finally make those changes and stop just talking about it, but really do something, act?
Thank you very much. Stephanie, Katharina, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I'm just talking about Corona, just one thing to add from my side. I mean, let's be realistic and quite honest here. Corona totally shifted our priorities in the companies, right? I mean, first of all, we needed to check, you know, now from a business perspective, how are our customers doing? This has an impact on our profitability at the end of the day, right? So of course that was a big focus. And the second focus is, or was and still is, you know, it's digitalization. How fast were we able to change our mindsets? How fast were we technically able to really change the setup for most of our employees to allow them, to enable them to work from home? And that also has to do with empowerment. Now, not, you know, focusing on female versus male leadership or empowerment, but overall answer to, you know, had Corona crisis pandemic an impact on the focus on D&I? From my perspective, yes, it had, but we need to get back on track, like you also said, Christina. So this is quite important now when it settled somehow, the situation with Corona.
Thank you very much. Yeah, very much agree. It's taken a big shift away from the mind's eye, but it's vital that it gets back into focus as strongly as we can get it into. Anna, was there something else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just always get a little troubled if we're talking about profitability. And what we're seeing right now is like we have billions of dollars and euros being supporting the companies, and the first thing they're thinking about profitability is laying off people, and doing it at the same time, you know, receiving from our public funds, paying by the taxpayers the money, and then laying off people. So profitability going back on track always gets me a little nervous, because I think restructuring in the right now has to be totally different than in the past. So it's not this reflexes on cost cutting, profitability and growth, but rethinking, as Stefanie just said, digitalization and all the impacts we have, and having a total new goal setting scheme. And that has been discussed in everywhere, but it's not common knowledge yet that we have to have new goals in long-term growth and healthy growth. And that is ecological, so all the ESG agenda and all the Maastricht criteria being different in the future than in the past. And therefore inclusiveness is on top of this agenda, because it's all has to do with potentials, knowledge, skills, competencies of your workforce. And as long as you don't know what knowledge you have in the workforce, you can't lay off people in the same systemic way you have done that in the past. So right now is rethinking the agenda and not, you know, going back because it's a crisis. And this is what we have to emphasize. And this is why I took off and I'm doing that right now with the Charta, because I think we have to spread it and talk about it. And now it's the chance to, you know, face the future and solve the future with the inclusiveness agenda, because diversity is there. I mean, it's a fact. It's just not visible. It's just not inclusive in the decision-making process as we need it for the future. But right now we have to do it totally different than in the past. We have to do it in a new way. And that's what we have to underline.
Yeah, and if the last year has proven one point, it's that we are actually capable of change. So I think you're absolutely right, and that's for us one reason why for us this year is a year where we focus on the DEI agenda a lot, because we think that to keep that momentum that's just going on and to, you know, utilize it for something like this.
Yeah, exactly right. The companies that are going to succeed from this are the ones that use Corona as a catalyst, not as an excuse. And I think there's quite a lot of studies out there that show that profitability does come from a diverse and inclusive environment anyway. So it should be a self-fulfilling prophecy, one would hope. I noticed that we are coming towards the end of this. So as a final point, I would just like to ask each of our speakers to share an action or a quote or something that they would like everyone who's attended to take away from this, that they can use for the future. So whoever'd like to jump in first, then please feel free.
I can go first if you like. So just a short one. We are running out of time. I mean, first of all, you know, I'm super inspired by this discussion, and the next thing I want to do is also sign the Charter of Diversity for sign up with Uponor here, and really become part of this amazing network again. We can learn so much from each other, and exactly as you lined out, Anna, it's a new way, right? We need to look into diversity and inclusion and really get new perspectives in. And to all this, you know, next generation of female leaders outside there, the second point or my closure here really is make an impact in every single assignment that you are given, and look at it as, how can I take this to the next level? And be confident in yourselves. Just, you know, go for it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Katharina, would you like to jump in next?
Sure. I would first of all like to emphasize the point that Stephanie's made. I think you know, you are equally capable, and in some respects maybe bring an even more interesting perspective to the table. So if you want to pursue your career, and if you want to become a leader, or, you know, build on your career, so absolutely go for it. There's absolutely no reason why you can't do what, you know, a lot of men have achieved over the last decades of years as well. And for me, the second point would be to all the companies out there: please make the DEI agenda part of your company as well, because I think to progress, we will just need more diversity, and obviously we need to provide inclusive environments to be able to nurture this. So I think this needs to become a more important topic, and as Stephanie is so inspired by what Anna said, so obviously go and join and sign the Charter of Diversity. And I think that's something that all of the companies should do.
Thank you, Katharina. Christina, if you'd like to take the stand.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I also needed to mention, I looked up again, when did we sign? When I was in my corporate role, we were one of the early signers of the Diversity Charter in 2008. Was quite a small community coming together to do the signatures. I know nowadays these events are much bigger. So absolutely every organization that's not yet signed the charter should do so, and also join your conferences and all the materials that are out there. Because if we look at the early beginnings of diversity and inclusion, really a lot was trial and error. That excuse is no longer valid. There is a substantial amount of knowledge out there in the world. So look for that. Don't derail by asking questions. I find that very often that conversations have a complete wrong direction, where they're not actually tackling the topic, but rather looking for excuses not to do something. So get serious, do something. And there is a ton of material out there that gives you good tips. And for the women in particular, I think really times are changing. And we know that since 2016, I think in particular, we have seen in the world a lot of dynamics, and for women also to wake up and claim their power, because now we think that we can really go for it and don't hold back, and don't do it on your own. You are not alone. So there's also a lot of ways how you can connect, get together. One, for example, also is the Tiara Resource Circle, where you can get impulses and inspiration on your own, kind of like a self-coaching also, but then also get together with other women and do it with each other, not on your own. We don't have to do it on our own, and also involve men, because we know also there is a lot of men who are also really supporting the agenda, and we just have to keep the energy going and flowing in the right direction. Then I think we can achieve a lot of great things.
Thank you so much, Christina. Anna, if you'd like to close us out.
Yeah, I just saw a question about the new KPIs set in sustainability, if there is any proof on the long-term KPIs. And I would just recommend to read the white paper of the WEF, the World Economic Forum, or the ACC Human Capital paper that just has been released. And there are a lot of IFRS and regulatory governance papers flowing around, and they are embedded right now in the regulatory environment. So there is a lot going on, and the investors shift from short-term KPIs to long-term value KPIs, but we still have to embrace that. And having said that, is like gender equality is, I think, the spearhead of the modernization process we are running. And there's such a lot of amazing women working in networks and pushing the agenda from this short-term minded KPI set agenda to a long-term healthy growth, where everyone plays a role, and especially with the climate change, we're so much urged to coming from the no in the action. And this is what we can do. We can do that as women, being connected and learning from each other, because this is a skill and competency we have, of course, and making other people visible. And so I can just encourage to do that. And I'm not so much into women don't speak up. I'm more into, you know, the leaders have to listen better. And it's people like us here in the panel that can speak up and be loud and change the world. So let's go on this modernization process together and be the spearhead of a community that leads to a better place to work and to live. That's, I think, women driven as well.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all four of you, and to everyone who attended today. I hope I can speak for everyone to say that it's been a really enjoyable discussion, and I personally have learned a lot. So yeah, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, James, for putting all this up. Mm-hmm.
My pleasure. Take care, everyone.
We're leaving. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
So we could keep on discussing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just go forever.
Hope to see you all soon.
Yeah.
And
I'll
on my last page of the book, you can see your connection, community connection side. So whenever you like to keep on discussing, connect.
Absolutely, I will. I look forward to receiving the book.
See you guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.